Okay, got it. Okay, well, welcome everybody to my reading, and which is also reading with other people, but basically to celebrate, you know, the birth of my chapbook, 20 Pandemicals. I'm very happy that you've all decided to spend your Saturday either morning or evening or whatever it is. We have people from the West Coast, the East Coast, from the UK, which is pretty amazing. And before I get into that, I would like to thank some people very heartily. Thanks to Kelsey Day for setting up the framework, you know, the technical framework for the meeting. And huge thanks, of course, to Karen Kelsey Davis from Kelsey Books for accepting and publishing my manuscript. And I also want to thank her team, especially Delissa Hargrove, who worked with me a lot when I was proofing the manuscript. And special thanks to Annie Clavel, who couldn't be here today, who's the artist whose work we used on the cover. And it's like, wow, you know, I think you'll agree that it's a pretty wow cover. And to Shay Culligan, who designed the cover, who's amazing. He designed my last book with Kelsey Books as well, and is now doing all of them. Also, a big thank you to Brian Gilmartin, who's the photographer who took my author picture, and I just think he did a lovely job. You know, it's on the back of my book, and thank you, Brian. And again, thank you all so much for coming today. And what's amazing about this Zoom reading and others I've been to in the last couple of years is that it has gathered people of all stripes together, you know, East Coast, West Coast, UK, all over. And that didn't happen before. And some people are continuing to use Zoom readings as well as in person because of what, you know, they've learned from it, which I'm very happy about because I regularly attend a reading in New York. And the poets who will read with me today are also an amazing mix, you know, ranging from formalists to free verse writers and, well, all sorts of poets, and you'll hear. And I wrote this thing down, and now I'm wondering whether I should say it. Maybe world leaders should learn from this, you know. I mean, community is possible. And I think that people think of poets as being isolated, you know, and we are. Well, we're not isolated, we love solitude, but we form communities of all sorts. I mean, I have a wonderful community in LA. I have poets I know all over the place, some of whom are here today. And I just think that's incredible, you know, that we're all different, but we all work together in trying to produce the best work we can produce. So let's see, just a quick recap of what this is all about. You know, it's a book launch for my chapbook, but I also wanted to include poets who played a role in the genesis of the chapbook, and more on that later, and poets who just generally gave me amazing support and kindness during the pandemic. And I should add that there are people in the audience who also gave me support and kindness, but who are not poets, but welcome to you too. Let's see. So, and the reading of my Pandemicals, I just scattered throughout the event. So we'll start with one person, then I'll read a few, then another, and so on. It'll be to and fro all the way through. Now, first thing I'm going to do is introduce Rick Mullen, who is an old friend. He lives in New Jersey. He spent hours of time reading through my manuscript once it was complete and gave me much wise advice, most of which I took, but not all of it, but it was still wise, you know. And I was very, very touched that he was so engaged with my poems, especially as, and this is the bio stuff, he has a day job as a full-time journalist, you know, as well as being a prolific poet and artist. He's one of those, I can see Barbara in the audience, Barbara Blatt, who's also a poet and an artist. And it's great to have those two, you know, creative skills. Let's see. He's published many books. Wait a minute, I have 5 of them here. And I love them all. And Rick, when he sent me my bio, mentioned Soutine, which some of you, where is it? Soutine, which is a very long poem. It's a book-length poem about the artist Chaim Soutine. And I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, eventually, I think it's Tatsarima, right? It's incredible. I mean, I read it all the way through, and it's just an amazing story and beautiful poetry. And he also has noted that he's published a second version, what's it called? A second edition, sorry, of Hunky, which is an earlier book of his. It came out from Exarch Books last year. Then there's the Basilisk that came out in 2020, which that was when we exchanged manuscripts. You know, I looked at his and he looked at mine. And one of my favorites is a book called Sonnets from the Voyage of the Beagle, which is about Charles Darwin and his journeys around the world, which, again, incredible, makes history come alive. I know it's a cliche, but it really does. So Rick is going to read a poem, and he has also graciously agreed to introduce me. So Rick, in the spotlight. Hi, Rick.
Okay, am I unmuted at this point?
You are indeed.
Okay. All right. That introduction is going to be a hard act to follow with an introduction, Charlotte. Thank you very much. Well, good morning and evening or afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm in the afternoon. And welcome to a wonderful event, the launch of Charlotte's 20 Pandemicals. I will introduce the poet shortly, but I've been asked first to give some thoughts about the book. You know, when the pandemic struck and we were aware that we would have to enclose ourselves in our homes for an indefinite period of time, my reaction was excellent. You know, this, you know, meant that, well, I mean, I'd reached an age, you know, where I wanted to write out my days in my backyard or my basement and maybe occasionally howl at the moon. So this was like perfect. It gave me time to do more writing and painting and spend time with my family. Of course, it meant people were getting very sick and dying. Every member of my family's life was thrown into a blender, as were all of our lives in 2020. Everybody's had that experience. And in that sense, we were alone together, but mostly we were alone. You know, 2020 has really forced us to focus on things that we think about enough as it is, ourselves, but the state of the world. 2020 was an incredible year otherwise, politically, with, you know, a verdict coming up as to whether we would have an immediate second 4-year tranche of Donald Trump. That worked out well so far. And then there were the killings of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd.
Oh, well.
And
what was he fucked?
As you know, as the year went on, it became more complicated. Most of all, you know, the year was really a time, I think, that most of us thought about ourselves and evaluated ourselves and the context in which we live, our families, our past, and, you know, our thoughts of the future. And this is what Charlotte's book is all about, and is done so splendidly. So toward the end of 2020, she asked me, you know, would you take a look at the manuscript of this book that I've written about the pandemic? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Charlotte is a good friend, an excellent poet. She sent me it. I printed it out and I began to read it at 5:30 a.m. on a December morning in line for a rapid COVID test in the parking lot of the Willowbrook Mall on Route 46 in Wayne, New Jersey. This is like the inner circle of hell, you know. It was cold, it was damp, it was wet and dark. And around me were these like shadows that were people, like these things in like big coats and hoods. And I realized I was one of them. But I mean, I had in my hand this collection of poems. It was like a candle, you know, it's just this persistent light, you know, that gave off increasing level of warmth and some flashes and flares. And I was in an ideal frame of mind to somebody else's slog through the Brugelian hellscape, you know, that we spent a year on, or didn't really know where I was going at that point. And, you know, this hellscape had the look and feel of Los Angeles for the most part, but also of England, which at the time Charlotte was unable to visit. All her associations, the River Soar, where her father's body ages into earth, as she tells it in Pandemical number 14, his quiet body giving way at last to what we're all made of. And while I love the Los Angeles landscape throughout Pandemicals, I found her musings on her memories of England, her family, her memories of the dead, as her own thoughts turned to her own mortality, to be really the most touching. My mother died right before the pandemic started, weeks before I wouldn't have been able to see her in the hospital. So I, had a similar sort of feeling for family and loss going into this thing. The nurses were talking about a pandemic coming at the time. But what lends these poems, their great integrity as a book, is a backdrop that sort of stages a kind of I would call it a courageous hopefulness as the poet looks unblinking but undiluted, into the future, which is always unknown, always unwritten, is yet again right now taking an unexpected twist and being written as we speak. That's the nature of the future. And that backdrop is anxiety. Charlotte graciously asked many of us to read a poem, and I'm going to go first. First, let me tell you a bit about Charlotte as a poet. The collection that came out prior to this one, Descansos Drive, is one of the best poetry collections I've read of the many poets that I'm associated with. This is really a step forward and up, I think. The new book is really a fantastic book. Charlotte's an extremely generous friend and poet who has, really worked with all of us. I know you're in workshops in LA and also, some of the online ones that we're all involved in. And I was really flattered that she would invite me to speak. So I'll get through my poem and then we'll get right to Charlotte. Mine is not a poem about the pandemic, but more about that anxiety, that state of mind that I felt at the end of 2020. And the title comes from a term for a notation in music, which means an indefinite pause or an indefinite rest, I should say. Grand pause. I can't relax when Miles tells the band to keep it tight. He'll fire you on stage. I've seen it happen. On the other hand, there's no alternative. An anxious age provokes an anxious anthem. Straight ahead. I can't get back to normal when the news is so predictable. The cycle never ends. I can no longer tolerate my views. I can't retrieve the names of several friends. Remember what the poet Rilke said about the truth, about the pile of facts? I can't find where he said it though. Can you? And here's another thing. I can't relax. On stage, there is no exit interview. I keep it tight. The spotlight's turning red. Thank you for letting me read that, Charlotte. And folks, here's what we've all been waiting for. Charlotte Innes.
There we go. You can all hear me, right? Wait a minute. Okay.
You're all good.
I'm ready, yes. First of all, Rick, I'm just blown away by everything you said about me. I hope it's true. It's just beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, now I have to think about what to do next. So I'm going to read a couple of my pandemicals, but before that, I'll just say really quickly, they were written between May and November of 2020, and they are, as Rick has said, as the title suggests, about all that happened that year, all the various crises. The toxic politics. I hope nobody loves Trump here because you're not going to like it, you know. I said his name. You know, in none of the poems do I say his name, and I try to avoid saying it, but he's a presence, and he became a presence more and more throughout 2020. And who knew where we were going? You know, as Rick said, the future, what is it? And also in California, we had terrible fires, really, really bad. And they were also bad in 2021. But that was the first time everybody was saying, okay, gosh, climate change is real, you know. And so they creep into the poems too, plus England and a whole lot of other things. And I should say too, that the poems vary in tone. They're all the same form. They're all 16 lines long, 3/4 of them rhyme. And I think when I started writing them in May or just before May, it was still all very new, really, and weird, you know, but I don't think I felt quite as bad as I did later. And so there's a sort of whimsicality that creeps in, and all the way through there's this dark humor. And I'm like, where did that come from? You know, but then later they get angry, you know, so I'm going to read a whole range over the course of this. So first, I'm going to read his book. You get it without the, you know, post-its. First, I'm going to read Pandemical Number 1. And I realized the first 2 or 3 poems are about my neighborhood, or sort of bounce off what's happening in my neighborhood. And I think there were some neighbors that were going to come, but I didn't see any, but oh well. Okay, Pandemical Number 1. At this time, I am resisting cleaning, closets filled with stuff I ought to junk, old clothes, old shoes that have no worth or meaning, unlike my neighbors who methodically plunk their relics curbside with notes on shelves or gunky tables saying free, when it's the owners who are trying to free themselves from fear or boredom, I suspect, with a blitz of order, ordering what they can in this hell of a world turned topsy-turvy by inert invaders that come to life inside ourselves, that can't be cleaned away. For them, we're pay dirt, relics. I can live with cat litter strewn on rugs, old files, and paper bugs call home. What gets me is this sly virus goon who stuffs my brain with blanks like packing foam. That's number 1. And then I'm going to read number 3, which some of you may recognize. It's, well, I won't say anything about it until afterwards. Okay, Pandemical Number 3. Excuse me. A coiled, sleepy dragon winds around the store, stirring now and then to inch forward. Intrepid shoppers, not one downed by noonday heat. A woman tries to pinch the spot in front of me. We smile. So what? She's gaunt, limping. Besides, we have distraction, phones, texting, emails. One guy who's got a book is so engrossed, his satisfaction seeps along the line. Though masked and spread apart, tense from daring to venture out, we become celebrants of not dead yet, of deep blue sky, of rained on grass about as green as party garlands, until, at last, the entrance to the treasure house. A man, oldish, flower in hair, he's having a blast, doles out the wipes, then, bright-eyed, lets us in. Anybody recognize Trader Joe's on Hyperion? It really was weird. I just went, first time I went shopping, I think, and I drove up and I'm like, oh my God, it really did look like a serpent around the whole store. You know, the line went all the way around it. And I got used to that, actually, just standing in line, you know, waiting, doing whatever, checking my emails. So that was just sort of the flavor of the beginning of it. And that's what I'm going to read for now. And next up, I am going to introduce Sarah Maclay, who lives in Los Angeles and is one of the, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but one of the guiding angels in my life. And for years, I have been going to Sarah's workshops on and off. Most crucially, in the summer of 2020, when I wrote over half the pandemicals in that workshop. So huge thanks to Sarah and all the members of that workshop. They're all really special people and all helped me enormously. And just being together was wonderful. We called ourselves the Nightbirds, and I'll let Sarah talk about that. Sarah teaches creative writing and literature at Loyola Marymount University, or LMU, as we call it. And there is kind of strong LMU presence here, both among the readers and in the audience. So yay, LMU. And her newest collection of poems, Nightfall Marginalia, Marginalia, is due out from What Books, which is an incredible press, in 2023. She's also the author of 4 earlier full-length poetry books, including, with Holiday Mason, the She series, A Venice Correspondence, a great, really amazing book too. 3 chapbooks and a script for performance. She's been a City of LA Master Artist Fellow, artistic director of the Third Area reading series, which I do remember. Don't think it exists anymore. A winner of the Tampa Review Prize for Poetry and a resident at Yaddo. And what Sarah's going to do is read a poem of her own and talk a little bit about the workshop that helped me write 20 pandemicals and also helped all of us really write, try to write our best. So Sarah.
Hi, thank you, Charlotte. Can you guys hear me okay? There's stuff going on next door. I don't know if they're about to cut a bunch of trees down or what, but I'm going to try to speak before the noise starts again. And if it starts just before I try to read a poem, I probably won't read the poem because it will be the opposite tone. But I wanted to say really about Charlotte and writing these. This group, we call it the Nightbirds after a poem by Barbara Blatt, who's in the audience and reading today as well. And we just thought that it was a good name because we met at night. It's a group that's been going on and off since about 2005. Sometimes in fits and starts. I've had some hiatuses where I had to not do anything for a bit. And a lot of people wanted me to resume by late fall of 2019. And then when the pandemic came, I thought we can do it by Zoom. Why not? And it was actually great because it was one of those bright spots of community that we'd already been developing over the years and continue to develop and add on to. And we didn't have to drive. So, in LA, this is a big deal, really helpful. So Charlotte came in already having started to write these poems, saying that she was referring to them as pandemicals, and because she didn't know what else to call them. And we thought that was the perfect name. And of everybody in the group, Charlotte is probably the most consistent formalist, trying different things at different times. And it was as though this particular poem found its own form, which she's described a little bit as this 16-line form. And very, very much something that embraces everything that was going on in the moment, some of it funny, some of it horrifying, and some of it just really quotidian, just the day-to-day stuff. And I really admire you, Charlotte, for being able to write about things going on in this way. Often I find when some of the more traumatic things are going on in the world, I get completely stopped up and I can't, I get really blocked for a long time. And that's not what happens with you. So also somehow the form you found, I think, was a way of consistently drawing these poems out. And so I'm really, really happy that all of us in this super workshop, really fine poets in this workshop and generous poets, could make a bit of a nest for these to emerge. So hooray, thanks for reading them. And I'm going to try to read something before the sound changes over here. So, oh gosh, I think they're starting, but let me see what I can do. This is from the new manuscript, and it also came out in Field a few years ago. It's called Night Text. Let's imagine I'm translating something to you. You asleep or sleepless, or naming that third place between with the tips of your tapering fingers. I don't know the language, it bends. In the mind, in that strangely shared chamber, that is, I mean, in your hands, where you show me those seams of confusion and flight with such intimacy and don't know it. Even sans color, sans liquor, sans shape, we are twins, fraternal, unknown. The moon, invasive, huge, lunging in through the windows, makes no exceptions. It's true. It will never happen. You'd be surprised. And thank you to What Books for believing in this and supporting its emergence. Just in time.
Oops. Thank you so much, Sarah. Oh my gosh, my head is going to be out here, Plus, such a beautiful poem, and I'm really looking forward to reading the new book. I didn't wave. I have a bunch of her books here. I didn't wave them around as I did for Rick, but I think this is maybe my favorite cover. And this is the one that was written with Holiday Mason. And gosh, I didn't pull them all out, but this was a really important book too. So thank you. Whoa. So next, let's see. I'm going to introduce Beth Ruscio, who is a dear friend. I've known her for years and years, and we've been in lots of different workshops together, and really enjoy. I enjoy Beth's company. I hope she enjoys mine. But she's great. She's she's a member of the Nightbirds Poetry Group. She's also the daughter of actors and an accomplished actor herself. On stage, as she says, on stage and screens, large and small. She's a widely published poet with numerous finalist honors and the winner of the Brick Road Poetry Prize for her collection, Speaking Parts. And I will wave that around because it has a great cover. I think red is the color right now, right? I mean, I have red on mine. Look, see, red. And I've noticed a lot of books with red on the covers. I don't know if it means anything, but this is really, really beautiful. It's a great, great read. Great book. Let's see. And that was published in August 2020. So later this year, her essay called In Praise of Humble Ingredients Exalted, and her poem Summer Calling, this is how she explained it to me, and maybe you can explain it best. Will be published in Outlaw Theatre by Padua Playwrights Press and Theatre Communications Group. And so I'm just going to let Beth take over. Beth.
Thank you, Charlotte. I just want to say before I start that I was reading this 2 poems at a time in the morning, and then this morning I read it all the way through. It can be read any way that you want to, but buy this book. So it's transporting. I feel like I get to relive 2020 all over again, but on the page, not in real life. Because this is for Charlotte, I figured I would read the poem where I grapple with a Shakespearean character. So I'm going to read my poem, Towards an Uneasy Love for Ophelia. Oh, you scattered, fragmented wisp, you shattered flower pot shard, you torch singer, and I think nothing, my lord. That load you choke down, that we are born to be mastered, you pod over unlucky charm. Yet, what would I give for a sure and certain place in the chain of being? How easy for pigeons to curtsy, how safe, fixed at the feet of oaks among vines, beneath a seraphim canopy, to coast above the work song clack of shellfish and the livelong undertow. And how much I ache for a faith like yours, its wobbly legs, its puppiness, how soft to give everything over, every muscle, every ghost, to the collapsing fugue, to sleep. Because anyway, we are all of us weak, crying, Uncle. Life is weakness. And in every ending, we all lose the will, and the victory is without stones in your pockets, and the river is your answer. Oh, Ophelia, you deliver me from believing in ceilings, from the sway of swinging from some chandelier and hearing what you would say come out of my mouth. Who could deny me my moment of frailty? Talk me down from what ledge? Keep me from keening about my own stage to be a bad joke in the making. For want of what would I press on? But Ophelia, you disaster, you take my breath away, from the stinging nettles in your hair to the reeds in your teeth, as you breach the last lock so placidly, you darling damned.
Okay. I should be okay now. Everyone can hear, right?
Yep, you're all good.
Great. Okay. So Beth, wow. Yes, you are an actress. That was beautiful. Thank you. I think I did. I can't remember. The poem is very familiar. I think you may have brought it to the workshop, or I've seen it anyway. But it's lovely to hear it read. Really, really lovely. And oh, it's me again. Okay. I'm going to read two more pandemicals, 6 and 8. Let's see, 6. Yeah, this is. I think I saw a neighbor join. So, and Aman. Hope you don't mind me saying, is Aman here? I think he is. Anyway, we back in 2020 there was a lot going on aside from politics and pandemic and all of that. We had a real homeless issue in our neighborhood, and I wrote this poem sort of in the midst. Some of it was resolved. I mean, we still have a lot, as everyone does, all around. So, and I've changed the names of the 2 homeless people that I mentioned, if you know them. So pandemical number 6. Naked again, she twirls along my street, sits down in traffic, picks up stones like plums, inspects them, throws them away. Cather screams, Miguel, Miguel, where are you, Miguel? He comes at last, lays down a blanket, and they sleep unless they're high. Then it's a night of curses, screams. By morning, the sidewalks inches deep with litter. For Miguel and Cather, home. For us, sheltered people, already fearful enough, their life's a deluge, flooding ours, a madness we can't control for all our meetings. It's rough. The screams break us apart, ignite old sadness. Worried for our health, we envision viral droplets filling the air. 2 people, I tell myself, of hundreds. All the numbers spiral. To the east, more madness. This won't end well. Okay, yeah, that was a huge deal. We formed thank you. We formed a neighborhood organization, which got to be about 80 people in it, you know, and we were trying all sorts of things to help this too. We got help for the girl, but the other guy is still around, though we don't hear as much from him these days. So next up, I'm going to read, what did I say? 8. This is sort of not the opposite exactly, but now we're moving out a bit from my neighborhood. And I wrote it when I suddenly felt, gosh, you know, there is goodness in the world after all. You know, you can, it can get very cynical when bad things are happening over and over again, or at least, or depressed, or however it takes you. And I'll just read this, and it's sort of self-explanatory. Pandemical number 8. My stepson notes his dad, that is my ex, died 3 years ago today. He's tagged his mum, my ex's widow, and me. He says, thinking of family today. I'm dragged teary-eyed through all my deaths. His death, my dad's, my cat's, the death of my best friend, and what I thought I had discarded, shibboleths, creeping in like little deaths. No end to should I haves or shouldn'ts. I know, of course, no matter what I should or shouldn't have done, it's done. I'm awed by my stepson's grace. Flaws be damned. Now, in this time of death, let's shun the dark. Let's think of beautiful souls tonight. Cures for sadness. Something slant, old scars that signal mending. The cool folk rock I like, a rough-edged voice, a banjo, bright as stars. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, next, let's see. And now I'm going to introduce, sorry, some water. These poems are making me very emotional for some reason, yeah. So I'm going to introduce Nancy Murphy. And Nancy is also a member of the Nightbirds Poetry Group. She's a poet and a performer. She actually gave an earlier version of 20 Pandemicals a read through. I think it was 17 at the time, 17 poems, and gave me quite a bit of good advice, just here and there, you know, but they're all spot on. And I took all of them. Thank you. So thank you, Nancy. Nancy is a recent winner of the Aurora Poetry Contest and a semi-finalist in the 2020 Jack Grapes Cultural Weekly Contest. She has published a number of poems, all of which can be found on her website. And I meant to say, you know, if anybody wants to put their website or whatever it may be on the chat, I think that would help people if they want to follow up on things. I don't have a website. I'm a bit late to the game. So I hope I didn't miss anything, Nancy. Please add if I did. So, but now I want to introduce Nancy.
Thank you. Hi, Charlotte. Hi, everybody. It's been really fun to see these poems go from individual weekly, you know, studies and conversation in our workshop to seeing them all together and finalized. They have such a different impact and power, and it's like familiar when you're going through them, but they really kind of have a different life. So it's really exciting, and it's so generous of you to share your time and use this accomplishment as a time to create poetry community. So thank you. I'm just going to read a short piece that was just published in Montana Mouthful. It's a literary journal, and it's called Aftermath. After my mother died, I left my husband. He had always been a rock, but I stumbled upon someone more like fire, and I needed to ignite. Breathe into the blue edge of a flame, find myself in what remained. It's Friday night. I slice into red peppers. My new man scorches them on the grill, along with sweet corn, chicken in dried thyme, Spanish olive oil, together 10 years now, and I still call him new. This is just how I talk, how I tell myself I'm free. Remind myself that I could be reduced to ashes again. Sometimes I'm afraid that only burning can purge this longing for all that's lost, for those careless nights and all that's blazed. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Oh my gosh, I remember that poem. And it's just interesting what you say about the workshop. Yes, there we are poring over each other's poems, and then you hear them later and they're like, wow, you know, they sort of catch fire, spring into life. And that was wonderful. Thank you. I'm glad it got published. Wonderful, wonderful. I am going to read, I'm going to read 2 more pandemicals, and then we're going to have a short break, about 5 minutes, where you can chat to each other, get a cup of coffee, whatever it is you know you want to do, and then we're going to come back. Kelsey, is Quincy here yet?
Yep.
Oh, I hear you. I hear that voice. Okay, good. Because Quincy is going to read after the break. Okay. So I am going to read 11 and 12. Pandemical 11 was just actually published in Everse Radio, which I've always admired, and I felt very honored for it to be there. So pandemical, and also it touches on fires. I have a few poems that do that, the awful fires we had in California. Pandemical number 11. A starving deer is trying to nibble a tree, scorched black by fire. She cannot see what was, no longer is. Not a single juicy leaf, only what can't be eaten. Flecks of ash filling the air, covering streams and stumps and hills for miles. A gray plague smothering wild places. It's like what's killing us inside our bodies. The world is suffering. The world is sick, and seen or unseen, changed. Hotter, with seas lifting, animals dying. Inside, time and place seem rearranged. But wasn't it always so? Once, driving with my father past my dear old school, I saw no trim front lawns, but weeds waist high. In shock, my eye went up the slope, the school no longer there, an empty space, the sky. So, based on a true story, I really did drive by my old school and see, oh my God, it's not there. You know, and I just keep thinking about it and the losses that we have of things that seem just immovable. And it was a lovely old building. It wasn't that old, but it was a beautiful building that could have been used, you know, for anything. And this wonderful town council of the town where I grew up decided, no, just knock it down, you know. So yeah, loss. So now I'm going to read Pandemical number 12, which has some references in it I think everybody just about might know who RBG is, right? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was on the Supreme Court from 1993 to.
Oh, now what have I done?
Who's there? Oh, is it Pat? Pat, you need to mute. Anyway, yeah, she was on the Supreme Court from 1993 to 2020, September 2020, when she died, and everyone was like, oh no, you know, and that was when our former president selected someone else. And she became known as, you know, RBG, or the Notorious RBG, after a rapper called the Notorious B.I.G. And she was really kind of an icon and much beloved. And I also mention, maybe I'll say this afterwards, but one death and something that may have become a death. And that's the kind of time we lived in, or do live in. Pandemical number 12. There was a summer, wasn't there? No rain to soften the heart or stop the fires. Our state was almost burned to bits, but now it's feigning normalcy. I'm hearing birds of late chatter about the vote, the swamp, various aspects of natural order. Same old, you know? Like senators who say nefariously they keep their scorn for him a secret. So, lies plus loathsome votes add up to little. The ship is listing. When people think that heads might roll, allegiance becomes quite brittle. In fact, it's been a sorry summer. The deaths go on and on. One head really rolled. One governor almost shot. And RBG. Here's where I stop, recalling only the bold, some songs, a gleam of seaweed, anything pretty. So, yeah, this guy in France, in Paris, a teacher mentioned the cartoon, I think it was the cartoon of Muhammad, and some extremists chopped his head off, you know? And I thought in Paris, you know, but now I'm thinking in Ukraine, you know, it's just, you just don't know what's going to happen, what awful thing is going to happen next. I mean, a lot of good things too, but that was one big thing in 2020. And then a governor, what's her name, Whitmer, there's a note in the back about it. Anyway, she was almost kidnapped and possibly, you know, would have been shot. We don't know, but there was a plot to kidnap her. And then, of course, the death of RBG. So we've got the beginnings of, or not just beginnings, but the more overt actions and conversation about extremism, you know, and now we don't know where it's going. So that was that one. And next up, next up is the break. Sorry.
Could I just hop in real quick, Charlotte?
Yes.
I'm wondering whether you may have unintentionally skipped Wendy and Harry.
Oh my gosh.
So maybe we could hop really quick
Yes,
back.
yes.
I think
yes,
Wendy
sorry about
was
I
up.
kept
Maybe you could
thinking,
just.
you know, this seems really quick. So yes, I moved a page over, and poor Wendy, I'm sorry. I meant Wendy to come early because she lives in England and it's late there. So Wendy, I hope you're up for this. She is a dear, dear friend who gave me tons of support during this pandemic, you know, just emailing, talking, we just exchanging ideas all the time. And she's actually the best friend of my stepmother, which is how I know her. She just happens to be a poet, you know. And she is a very distinguished poet who lives in the UK. And however, she grew up in the US. And so she's kind of the opposite of me. We've talked about that, you know. I left England to come to the US and she left the US to go to the UK. And she's published 4 collections of poetry, the last of which is a selected. And most recently, she published an amazing, what we call a chapbook. In England, they call it a pamphlet, called Let Battle Commence, which is based on letters home from her great-grandfather, who was a Confederate soldier in the US Civil War. And I really recommend this book. I think, yes, here it is. It's just wonderful. Just like Rick's Darwin book, it just, really brings history alive and in a very personal way as well. And I just love reading it. And she had a reading and I loved hearing it. So here it is. Let's see. And there's a film of it also on YouTube. And Wendy, if you want to put that up on the chat, that would be great. And she also has a real sense of humor. She noted in the notes that she sent me that she derives inspiration from dance and dogs. That is a particular glorious greyhound named Ella. And yes, yay, dogs. Okay, Wendy, all yours. Wait, you have to unmute yourself, Wendy.
I'm now unmuted. You can hear me?
Yep, we can all hear you.
Yeah,
You're all
great.
set. Yep, you're good.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that extremely generous introduction, Charlotte. That was just lovely. Meeting you was such a special thing that you were my dearest friend's stepdaughter. How do such magical coincidences happen? It was just incredible. Anyway, here I go. There was something about the pandemic that seemed to create an imperative for poets, in particular, and for others as well, a sort of heightened imperative to write or do or say something really significant. In the void created by lockdowns, and we had many lockdowns in England where we were not permitted to go out at all for long periods of time, there was a sense of searching anxiously in kind of long, sort of empty, well, certainly empty in the sense that nothing was happening, that we had to make our own happenings. There was the radio, there was television, but they just sort of stretched out in time. So waiting for something to happen. This poem is called Yet Another Bloody Epiphany. When you ask me what I did today, I'll have to confess, I watched the clouds. When you ask me what I heard, I'll have to admit, I switched the radio off and listened to some birds. Though I confess that I couldn't name them from their songs or even see them on the trees in the distance on my neighbor's estate. And even though I couldn't shut out the nearby road, the hum and whoosh of traffic, I watched the clouds. When you ask me who was with me, I'll have to admit I wasn't alone, but sat on a woolly cushion on concrete steps next to a dog. And that while she slept, I watched the clouds. And I'll have to admit I didn't scrub the bathroom floor or riddle the grate of the log burner or tidy my desks or read from all the unread books of the poets I love or envy. But I sat instead, like Lady Muck, and read a short story titled Pornography, which was anything but, and I watched the clouds. Thank you.
Wendy, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Wow.
Thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here and see all the other people in your life over there.
Oh, my
Great.
pleasure. Yeah, it's great, isn't it, to bring everyone together? I'm just amazed. I'm sorry, and sorry to Hari from this. I turn over the page, and I'm going to be careful from now on from turning over 2 pages at once. But let me introduce Hari B. Kalza, who also is a member of the Nightbirds Poetry Group, lives in Los Angeles, and is a fine poet. She has published 3 books. Where is it? Let's see, now I've mixed them up. Here's Wendy's book, one of Wendy's books, which I brought out because it was a wonderful cover, and as well as Let Battle Commence. And then Hari's book called She Speaks to the Birds at Night While They Sleep, which was the winner of the 2020 Tebet Bach Clockwise Chapbook Contest, which is quite a big deal here. And it was judged by Gail Ronsky. So two good poets deciding, on good work. And Hari B is also in the early stages of putting together a new full-length book of poems. And she says, hopefully to be completed by summer 2022. And I believe I have heard some of those poems in our workshop meetings. And what I heard was just amazing. So Hari, over to you. Is she here? Oh, yeah.
Looks like you're muted, so you'll want to, there you go. You got it.
All right. First, thank you so much, Charlotte, for having this wonderful gathering and sharing the time for all of us, with all of us, to celebrate your new book. I just want to put in a little thing about Charlotte. What I find so wonderful about her is, well, many things, but that she writes with such heart, and she works with an incredible intelligence to bring her poems to their full beauty and intensity. And I've loved hearing, I don't know, I feel like the poems I've listened to before, they've just like expanded in their impact, and just the crafts that you use is just very impressive. So thank you. I am going to read one of my poems from She Speaks to the Birds at Night While They Sleep. The title is almost as long as some of the poems, but and they all start out with she. And I do have a kinship with Charlotte, and that these poems were also written during the early days of the pandemic. I would I would mostly be in my bed at night with my iPad and just kind of recounting the day. And writing in third person was very unusual for me, but I found it a way to bring more than myself into this, because we all felt apart, and yet there was such a kinship in what we were all going through. So they don't have titles. The titles are just the first line. So this is number 28, the last one in the book. She knows without the will to sweep the floors of rust and feathers, run water over her feet before sleep. The day would landslide her down a hillside. She is a tenuous thing, cotton and moss. But still, she whispers to herself that every molecule matters. And she is of this moment. She is something, a singular speck of ever. Thank you, and congratulations, Charlotte.
Thank you, Hari. That was wonderful. And I remember that poem. It's so great to hear all of these poems read aloud, and sort of it gives them, obviously an extra dimension of life and feeling, and just great. Thank you. So now we're going to have a break, right, Kelsey? Am I on schedule now?
Yep, you were on schedule. We are all set.
All right. So, you can unmute yourselves for 5 minutes, get a cup of coffee or whatever you need to do. I'm going to pop off for a minute, but I'll be back and we can chat, whatever, if there's time. So see you shortly. I'll put this in again.
I'm also going to hop and get a glass of water, but if anyone has any technical questions, you can bring that to me in like 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
I've put you on gallery view. Yeah. Everyone can unmute.
Wendy Klein, your poem was lovely. I'm your cousin from
Oh,
America.
Betty. Oh, how wonderful to see you there. How great that you made it. That's amazing. I was just going to go away and eat my dinner, which I've been
Well,
kind of
go eat,
viciously eating.
well, darling, go eat your dinner, and I love you.
I love you. Oh, how amazing.
Hi,
This is
Karen.
union.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Karen. How are
Hi,
you?
David. Hi,
Hi,
Walter. Hi, Quincy. Hi, Mary.
hey, Bill Connolly.
Hi, Gregory.
Stephen.
Gregory,
Hi, Meredith. Hi.
Gregory, good to see you.
Good to see you, David.
I envy you your sunsets.
Thank you.
Yes. Ah,
Maybe she's not on screen. Maybe we can get gallery view. We
Yeah,
get
I
gallery.
think so.
She made it. That's fabulous.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm fine. How's it you're in New York?
Yes, we're in New York.
Cold again.
The weather is crazy, up and down.
Yeah, it was about 20 to 30 degrees around here and snowing yesterday.
Yeah, we did the same thing. It's snowing one day, the next day it's like you're throwing clothes off. It's so warm. So it's a little crazy.
You know, I'm going to be in New York in May.
I was going to ask you if your trip is going to happen.
Yeah. We'll be doing a reading in Manhattan if you guys want to show up.
Where did you find a place?
Yeah, it's Parkside.
Incredibly complicated.
Parkside Lounge. Yeah.
All I need.
Lower East
Just to eat my dinner in Penny.
Side, I think.
Side?
Parkside Lounge.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send out a newsletter pretty soon.
Oh, great. Yes, do. That'll be a good reminder.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick. Good poem there.
Should have tested that.
You.
Hi, Rick.
Hi, Linda. How are you doing?
Friends, your
Everybody.
friend- I enjoyed your
Aw.
friend's
Who's your
poem.
dog?
hi, Rick. It's great to see the dog too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's
what
a
a sweet
puppy.
puppy.
We
Yeah.
got a little bit about fiddling around. I could have sorted
Hey, Quincy.
kind of formal settling.
Hey, David, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Yeah. So hopefully when it's my turn there, being right near sunset, let's see what the siren situation is like. We had about half a dozen fire trucks go by about 15 minutes ago. So fingers crossed.
Oh, really?
Hi, Quincy.
Hey.
Hi, Quincy.
Dog.
Who else is here? Oh, there's Robbie. Gregory, darling.
Hello. Hi.
I didn't know you were
for
coming.
inviting me. Liz.
Sorry?
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. And gosh, I didn't have time. I was going to look up your essay about Quincy's poetry,
Oh,
which
God.
I wanted to quote from, and I'm like, I was rushing and I didn't have that. So maybe you can say something about it, or Quincy can say something about it. But it was a brilliant essay. I mean, just
Thank you.
amazing.
Where is it? Where is it published, Gregory?
It was in that magazine, what was that? Acute, right? That Janet Kenny and Phil Quinlan used to do.
Oh, was it Acute? Or Angle.
Angle, yes.
It was called
Yeah.
Angle.
Angle, yeah, that's right.
Yes, because I publish that too sometimes. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember that.
There you go. Either acute or obtuse, right, Quincy?
Oh, yeah, right. That was the slogan, yeah.
The article was acute. Yeah.
Gregory is never obtuse.
No. Well,
Sorry,
hello,
I've been-
Linda and David. I didn't say hello. Yeah, it's lovely to see
Hello
you
to
in New York, right? You're in New York.
We are still here. Yeah.
Yeah. And Meredith.
I'm in,
Yes,
I'm in-
Charlotte, I have to show you something. Hang on.
Okay. All right. It's amazing.
Here?
Oh, wow.
RGB.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
She's going to be carved in stone in the wall of the New York State House, where there are portraits of women from the 19th century base or from the turn of the century. And they're finally adding one more. So
Oh, that's so great. I should say to everyone that Meredith is an amazing, I mean, all of these people here with two creative skills, you know. Meredith is an amazing sculptor, and she, oh gosh, I'm so tired, my mind is going. There's a statue in Central Park in New York that it took a long time to get there, right, Meredith? But it's
Yes.
there. Do you want to just say a quick something about it? Because
Charlotte, just as a heads up, we are past the 5-minute mark.
oh yeah,
Let's go back to poetry.
all right. But anyway,
just to keep us on track. I know, I'm sorry, I would love to.
no, you're absolutely
I just know
right.
we're
and I
running a little
forgot to
behind.
look what time I do tend to ramble, yes.
all
But
good.
anyway, that lots of so much good stuff in this Zoom room. I have to get out of gallery view, right? Speaker view. There we go. Yes, so this is where I introduce Quincy R. Lair, who is an old friend, fabulous poet, who used to live in Brooklyn. You know, he has East and West in him. He now lives in Los Angeles. And I was very grateful to Quincy at the beginning of the pandemic because he started an online poets happy hour for a few of us here in LA, but also kind of outside LA. Quincy is, quote, you know, I hate these labels, but he writes form, you know, poetry in form, and there's a whole community of us, or them, or me, or I never thought I was a formalist, actually. I always sort of call myself a semi-formalist, but I do have the community, which is great. And anyway, so it was, you know, this happy hour online, and it really, really helped. It was kind of a lifesaver, actually, in times of lockdown and trying to make sense of the pandemic and all that right at the beginning. So thank you, Quincy, for that. And then also, I you know, tried to find everyone's books. This is just a couple of them, but these are the most recent ones. Let's see, this is a Kelsey book, right? Yeah. Near Hits and Lost Classics, another amazing cover and a great read. Okay. And this is The Dark and Loud, The Dark Lord of the Tiki Bar, which sounds like a reference to Otto's Shrunken Head in New York, but Quincy can talk about that. Let's see. So he, as I said earlier, he is an amazing poet, and I'm just going to move on and let Quincy do his reading. Okay.
Okay, thanks for having me, Charlotte. Thanks for the book. I'm glad to see that some people did something with the pandemic other than develop a penchant for nervous breakdowns. I'll just, you know, in the interest of time and so forth, keep it quick. So this poem is actually one of my pandemic poems when it became clear which timeline we were in. So it's called Okay Boomer. Starts with an epigraph. Get your words straight, Jack. Let's do push-ups together, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do. Let's take an IQ test. That's Joe Biden. In the TV show of life, you'd best hit pause. Rewind it back until it's as it was. When all the girls were hot, the stars were white, the president was black. You slept at night, assured there was a person with a plan, a theme song, and a striking yes we can on the bumper sticker of the Porsche. The we you mean does not mean you, of course. But what the hell, it's springtime every day when lawns are watered and you get your way in politics and love and rock and roll. And what is left is what you can't control and try not to think about. An orange sky burns in the distance as the airplanes fly on improvised routes, and golfers still tee off, ignoring the smoke, trying not to cough. You soon enough retreat to where the clash becomes a vaguely West Side Story flash of someone's switchblade last mid-century. You stare them down again, an enemy seen far away in memory's telescope, a dubious victory, nostalgic hope that we can win again, that we'll unite, lifeguards and patrons, with all the wrongs set right by folksy charm and a steel-eyed show of nerve. an anecdote you're built or you're holding in reserve, and hope you won't fuck up. A reverie that seems so vivid and malarkey free. Perhaps it's true, perhaps it's relevant. Another bit of airtime badly spent. An answered question no one thought to ask. Another move unsuited to the task. Thanks for having me, Charlotte. Congrats on your book.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure, Quincy. Actually, Kelsey, where are you? Kelsey Day.
I'm right
how are we
here.
doing for time?
Do it.
How are we doing for time?
Well, we might need to put a little pep in our step just because I'm gonna need to head out around 4:15 to catch a bus, but we have about I don't know, about 20 minutes. So I think
only 20 minutes. Whoa. Okay. Let's see, because we have a few more poets. Oh dear. I'm going to go ahead and just, I was going to read, and maybe I'll still read them, but I'm going to introduce Gail Wronski, who is another of my angels, I like to think, who's also connected with LMU. She teaches there, and I've been to several workshops with her over the years. She's had these wonderful day-long workshops for poets. And her most recent book is Under the Capsized Boat We Fly, New and Selected Poems from White Pine Press. And she has a book coming out in October, The Stranger You Are, from Tia Chucha, I hope I'm saying that right, Press. And the book will have drawings by Gronk, you know, the famous Gronk. What did I do with it? Oh, here it is. Here's, since I'm waving books around, I do have to show Gail's book, which is also an amazing read. Okay, so Gail.
Okay. Thanks so much, Charlotte. This is so much fun. I really enjoy this, and I'm so glad I'm hearing all of these people and hearing your pandemicals, which gave me such a lift when you sent them to me. I mean, they just put so much in perspective for me, and I think they're such wonderful poems. So I was delighted when you asked me to write a blurb for the book. I really was, and it was so much fun to do. So I'm going to read a poem. It's not about the pandemic, but in honor of the night birds, it's a night poem, and it's called Don't Shoot the Insomnia Poem. It contains my best description of the long worm of night, my tribute to the immeasurable pit of ice on the page in front of me. In my window, a slow moon is posing, offering itself as a silver ransom payment for my life. Any runaway would give up their last smoke to get off of this funereal stagecoach. Every wall is a door, wrote Emerson. Open the one called tomorrow, I dare you, I say to the stone mask I hold out in front of me like a theatrical prop, our tentacle tongues joining to form one thick cord of absurdity and blood. I've heard that well-mannered people say goodnight without equivocation or irony, and so, sweet dreams, stone mask, sleep tight, page. Don't let the bed bugs bite, you gloomy little sonnet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail. Wow.
It's a new poem.
Yay.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. And I'm sorry, I forgot to say you wrote a blurb, and it was an incredible blurb. You know, I'm like, well, I won't say anything. If you buy the book, you'll see. But anyway, moving on, since the time is running out. Amanda, are you here? Yes. If I'm
here.
Hooray. Okay. I'm just going to quickly introduce Amanda. She gave me another LMU connection, but also a Nightbird. Okay. And I'm going to just mention one thing because we don't have much time, but her chapbook, Periphery of Another, was a finalist for Cordelis Press Gwendolyn Brooks Poetry Prize, which is pretty impressive to me. And should be to everyone. So Amanda, why don't you go ahead and read your poem, because we still have 2 more poets, and I'll just see if I can fit more of mine in after that. Okay.
Well, Charlotte, thank you so much for having me. I'll keep this short, but just to celebrate you. And it was just so much fun seeing these poems firsthand in their first drafts. You know, sometimes we sort of go to a bakery and we pick out a donut or a cake and we don't actually see the cook in the kitchen with the flour getting messy. And so it was really a privilege to see you in the kitchen making these poems. So thank you so much for having me, and congratulations again on these. I'll be reading a poem called Hide, about the body and embodiment. Hide. When you undressed me, it resembled arranging the senses in order of loss. I tried to arrange myself in an order that made sense, like colorways or the daily use of spices along a kitchen counter. A body once, it was warm, like sandstone, like looking up the meaning of a word, retrogression, radiance. If only bodies could materialize in euphonies or freesias. If only wearable art meant being naked from the waist down. If only I could replicate this temporal hide I'm now fixed to, take it apart instead. Have you ever examined your birthmarks? I have one on my inner thigh, blotchy, taupe, silky when wet, less cherry, more lychee. Silkworms have an easier time weaving inner body matter into outer textile constructions. I envy them. Some nights my body and I are 2 strangers forced to share a coat with one another in subway cars or taxis in motion with no destination, stitched up filling, faux dressing, each allowed 1 armhole glove and sock, half selves riding through towns, crafting cities out of endings until morning when my skin comes back to me in pieces, in vibrant pixelations too tender to touch. Thank you, Charlotte.
I'm just really amazed by all the different kinds of poetry coming up. It's also great. I'm going to have to move really quickly. So Ned, are you here?
So actually, Ned reached out to me and was having technical issues, so he was not able to join, but he did want me to read something for him real quick. So if that's okay, I'm just gonna read a little blurb about you.
Okay, let me just say that Ned is really, I think he's won an award for every book he's written, hasn't he? He's won really big awards and is a super poet, and I'm sorry he's not here, but yes, do go ahead.
So he just wanted to pass along this quick blurb for your wonderful book. He said, 20 Pandemicals is a smart, skeptical, secular book of ours. Beautifully crafted poems depict the collective doubts and hopes of America's anxious lockdown months. Apocalypse, Inns reminds us, isn't confined to the viral threat. Homelessness, California wildfires, scorched earth politics, and more persist whether we venture outside or not. But family bonds and memories grace offer some solace. With her native England as out of reach as relief from the pandemic's constraints, the poet finds freedom in these 16-line poems, each of them memorable, moving, and marked by empathy. Though Inns knows the world's burning like, I'll say it, the fires of Armageddon, she also reminds us it's best at times to shun the dark and think of beautiful souls tonight. Those are quick quotes from you, actually. This accomplished and timely collection is an understated marvel. So very, very kind words from Ned. And he expresses his regrets for not being able to join us and gives his best to all of you.
Well, thank you so much, Kelsey, for doing that. And
of course.
I mean, it's good that you're recording because people can pick up on that, right?
Exactly, absolutely.
Really quick then, I've got Hilda. Hilda is the last poet. Let's see the time. Would I have time to read one more Pandemical after Hilda? Or...
I certainly think so. Sure.
Okay, I'll have to
I
figure
think
out which
so.
one. Okay,
Yeah,
so
you're good. You're good.
Hilda is coming up next, and she published this book a while back called Optimism About Trees, which I really recommend. And since I'm waving books around, I really feel like I should show this for Hilda. And she is also a member of the Nightbirds Poetry Group. One of my blurb writers, I should have said that, really wrote everybody. I think this is amazing. All the blurbs are incredible. I have to say. Let's see, she is the curator of Poetry LA, which is, if you live here, you know it. If you live here and you're a poet, you know it. A video gallery of poets in Southern California. You can look it up, or you can put the link in the chat, Hilda. And she has a manuscript in the works, and I just want to say, if these are the poems that I've heard in the workshop, they're just stunning, you know. I'm really can't wait to see it. So Hilda, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte. It's been beautiful listening to you read from your wonderful book. And I'm so happy to have read it many times, and I'm going to read it many times more. So this one is very short and kind of responds to all your pandemicals. It's called Holding On. It's like walking home with a best friend, the green and gold of the orange tree, heavy with fruit. I still wake up frightened, adrenaline feathering across my shoulders, down my arms, breaking through sleep. On Facebook, a woman I don't know writes, after decades of estrangement, my 3 sisters and I reunite. Their hands touching become my prayer. Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Hilda. Oh, that's lovely. I'm just going to read one more pandemical. As you can see, I had marked up a whole bunch, but I don't know, is Mike Howkins still here? He's like an old friend of my father's. My father was a member of the Labour Party and active in politics all his life, really. I mean, he was a refugee from Germany, and I think that triggered a lot of stuff. But Mike is someone who was, an old friend of my father's, and he and I and my stepmother, whenever I would visit, would go to the pub, you know, which is a very English thing to do. And it was lovely. It's in this little village in Leicestershire. And I think what I'll do is read the poem that mentions the village, and which I've missed going to for 2 years now, which breaks my heart. And I'm sort of hoping I can go, you know, again this year. We'll see. It's called Pandemical number 14. The village I cannot visit now slides in glimpses through my thoughts. The cows grazing meadows by the River Soar that lie across from a field where my father's aging into earth, his quiet body giving way at last to what we're all made of. I'm oddly shaken to think my body's a living piece of him. So he's still here, laid to rest, but living on in me. Cliché, you'd think. But having felt so separate for so long, my life, I cannot say what all this means to me, except that more of me is there than I had thought. But oh, I want to see the village, my stepmother's garden, to hear the blackbird's song, to smell a rose, clink cheers, and talk of jaunts we might embark on. So that's it. I think we're done, right? You can all unmute, I guess. Do we have a minute or two? Maybe a minute.
We sure do. You know, I might go ahead and stop recording if that's okay with you.
Oh yes, right. Yes, I was going to say
that.
we should